There were more than 40 documents, over 900 pages, and in them, the unmasking of associates of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He was the multi-millionaire accused of sex trafficking before his suicide in 2019. We knew Prince Andrew would be in the documents. We knew that Bill Clinton would be named. But who else was mentioned? We're diving in tonight. But before we do, it's important to note the inclusion of someone's name is not an indication of wrongdoing. Allegations of sex trafficking rings and rampant abuse taking place at Jeffrey Epstein's homes in his secluded private island.
There was something happening here that was bigger than just Jeffrey Epstein.
From royals to former presidents, fresh scrutiny tonight within more than 900 pages of documents unsealed for all to see.
Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming? Yes.
Unbecoming? He was a sex offender.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm being polite, in the sense that he was a sex offender.
The documents include the deposition of one victim who accuses Prince Andrew of groping her breast in 2001. It also contains excerpts of depositions from Virginia Jeffrey, seen here next to the British royal, detailing sexual abuse. In this account, it says Jane Doe number 3 was forced to have sexual relations with this prince when she was a minor in 3 separate geographical locations. In London at Ghislaine Maxwell's apartment, in New York and on Epstein's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, in an orgy with numerous other underage girls.
No.
No to all of it?
All of it. Absolutely no to all of it.
But it's not the only shocking allegation of an underage orgy on the infamous pedophile island. Another is tied to the late Professor Stephen Hawking. It came to light from a 2015 email sent by Epstein to Maxwell asking her to pay off Virginia Jeffrey's friends to disprove her allegations. Here's what he wrote. You can issue a reward to any of Virginia's friends, acquaintance, family that come forward and help prove her allegations are false. The strongest is the Clinton dinner, and the new version in the Virgin Islands that Stephen Hawking participated in an underage orgy. Pictures showed Hawking on Epstein's private island. The renowned physicist died in 2018. While we don't know more about this Clinton dinner mentioned in the email, we do know Bill Clinton was name-dropped 73 times in the unsealed records, including in a statement from Johanna Schoberg, who testified saying Epstein told her that Clinton likes them young, referring to girls. Clinton's camp denies any wrongdoing. Other names include Epstein's attorney, Alan Dershowitz. He's mentioned a total of 137 times.
Of course I'm on the list. I was his lawyer. I flew on his plane with other lawyers.
But according to these court documents, Dershowitz allegedly forced a minor named as Jane Doe 3 to have sex with him on several occasions, saying, quote, Epstein required Jane Doe number 3 to have sexual relations with Dershowitz on numerous occasions while she was a minor, not only in Florida, but also on private planes in New York, New Mexico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. In addition, it's alleged that, quote, Dershowitz was an eyewitness to the sexual abuse of many other minors by Epstein and several of Epstein's co-conspirators.
Epstein was shown to be what he was. I ended my personal association with him completely, but I maintained a legal relationship with him. I represented some of the worst people in the world and continue to do so. That's my life.
Other celebrity names have been littered throughout the document, from the king of pop, Michael Jackson, to magician David Copperfield and supermodel Naomi Campbell.
When I heard of what he'd done, it sickened me to my stomach, just like everybody else. Because I've had my fair share of sexual predators, and thank God that I had good people around me that protected me from this. I mean, right now I stand with the victims. They're scarred for life.
One victim claims that she was told to have sex with the owner of a large hotel chain at Naomi Campbell's birthday party. Another saying she met Michael Jackson and David Copperfield while at Epstein's Palm Beach home, but there's no implications of any wrongdoing.
Jason Guidola has also been reading through the documents and joins us with more on this. Jason, let's talk about the appearance of Bill Clinton's name more than 70 times. What impact might this have on American politics?
Yeah, hey there, Nicole. Now, this may have a little impact if you're Donald Trump heading into election year, but one expert tells me that this probably won't carry as much weight as some may think, adding that Clinton's association with Epstein likely won't be enough to get him in front of a courtroom. However, all in all, the documents being released raises more questions about if there are more documents out there. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton's name was mentioned a staggering 73 times in the unsealed court documents pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein. In her 2016 deposition, defendant Joanna Schoberg testified to the deceased sex offender's connection to Clinton. The documents showed her being asked, "Do you know if Bill Clinton was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein?" She replied, "I knew he had dealings with Bill Clinton. I did not know they were friends until I read the Vanity Fair article about them going to Africa together." It continued on. "Did Jeffrey ever talk to you about Bill Clinton?" Schoberg replied, quote, "He said one time that Clinton likes them young," referring to girls. Meanwhile, court papers showed accuser Virginia Giuffre had argued that Clinton and Epstein had a close relationship, but didn't allege any illegal actions from the former president. However, it was once reported that she spent time with Clinton on Epstein's island, which Clinton had denied before.
Any comments on the alleged allegation of your connection with Jeffrey Epstein?
Clinton's PR team also denied the allegations in 2019, only adding that Clinton took a handful of trips with Epstein pertaining to his charity, and he had never visited his island.
Until the evidence suggests that Clinton did something wrong, I would like to think that these are just allegations. The people who are making them, these are really empty allegations that it's simply not backed up by the evidence at the moment. I think the real question here concerns the relationship that people of wealth have with each other and how that wealth works and what that influence means.
Political analyst Henry Giroux believes it's unlikely Clinton will be deposed or anyone else. And Clinton wasn't the only former U.S. president in the documents. Donald Trump, who's running for re-election this year, was name-dropped by Schoberg when recalling a plane ride with Epstein headed to Atlantic City. The defendant said, quote, "Jeffrey said, great, we'll call up Trump." Schoberg was also asked if she gave Trump a massage, which she denied. In 2019, Trump admitted to knowing Jeffrey Epstein, but said they had a falling out and hadn't spoken in 15 years. He also said he wasn't a fan of his.
You know, this is a guy who has 91 felonies sort of charged against him across, 4 districts in the United States, and his popularity is growing. He seems to, in some ways, simply turn every charge against him around and direct it at the people who basically have produced that charge, and it somehow gets taken up in the press as a kind of balanced issue. He said this, they said that, and it disappears.
The documents release prompted ongoing speculation of more prominent names involved. Some celebrities were mentioned in questioning, but none of them were accused of any wrongdoing. And just to recap, the documents showed no evidence of wrongdoing from either Clinton or Trump. Now, so those questions, if there are going to be more documents out there, the Associated Press is reporting that 250 more are expected to be released in the future. No date has been set, though. Nicole.
Thanks, Jason. Joining us now is Arick Fudali, partner and managing attorney of the Bloom firm, who represented 12 of Epstein's victims. Arick, thank you for taking the time to chat with us tonight. So first of all, how are the survivors feeling about these documents being released?
That's a great question, and it's an important question that I think is getting overlooked through all of this sort of circus surrounding the release of these documents. I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword for the victims. On one hand, I think there's some desire to see more and more of Epstein's associates and more of the crimes that Epstein did exposed. I think that's sort of an underreported part of this story is people get really interested in his associates. And I think people forget what a monster and what a prolific predator Jeffrey Epstein was. So I think any exposure of him and his network and his associates is a good thing. But on the other hand of it, these victims are looking for closure. Jeffrey Epstein has sort of had a control over them and a control over their lives for decades, not just from the abuse they endured, but from the aftermath and the fear of him. So now having to turn on the TV, open up their phones and see, you know, Epstein's face and name all over the place, it's a bit counter to the closure they're looking for. So I think it's a little, you know, it's a little double-edged here. But, you know, all in all, I think the more exposure of Epstein and what he did and the power he exerted is a good thing. I'd like for them this to finally end for them.
When we talk about closure, there are a lot of allegations listed within these documents. So what happens next here when it comes to people like Prince Andrew or Bill Clinton, who are mentioned dozens of times?
Right. So, I mean, a lot of that is not a surprise. I mean, I think these are names, most of the names that have mentioned or have been released as part of these documents are names we've heard before. They were names that have been associated with him. I think former President Clinton didn't even object to the release of his name in these documents. So I certainly don't, and there's certainly nothing incriminating in those documents about former President Clinton. So I'm not really sure where this goes. You know, maybe further investigation into some of these allegations. I saw there were some deposition allegations that we hadn't exactly heard yet before. So maybe further investigation, but that's just speculation at this point. It's possible these documents are released and sort of the story sort of dies out.
This case has been one of the most followed around the world. Millions have been eagerly waiting to see these unsealed documents. So, Arick, is this the closest thing we're going to get to the truth behind what happened within Epstein's circles?
You know, possibly. And I think there's another thing that people often lose sight of. And people assume, you know, there was this rumor of this like black book, you know, that was going to be revealed of all of his clients. And I think people assume that because there are so many victims and Epstein was so powerful and associated himself with such powerful people that the sex trafficking scheme must have been for someone other than Epstein or a ring of people other than Epstein. That's just not the case. While there may be other, you know, one-off allegations against, you know, various individuals, Jeffrey Epstein was having multiple victims, multiple young women come to his home to be sexually abused multiple times a day for decades. So when people want, you know, ask, you know, well, who was he sex trafficking for? Who was this scheme for? It was for Epstein. So I think people are surprised and don't really understand the breadth of the nature and the amount of abuse Epstein was committing on a daily basis.
And Arick, going back to the survivors now, is this case closed? Can they go on with their lives?
I hope so. I mean, you know, the victims were, for the most part, deprived of their chance of justice when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in 2019. There was some measure of civil justice with the Epstein Claims Fund that was done. Now there's a JP Morgan claim that, you know, that was well publicized. And there's some other, you know, civil accountability. Of course, Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. But you know, I think for now it's time for closure. It's time to end this. It's time to stop throwing Epstein in the news cycle every few months. Every time someone thinks there's going to be some grand revelation, that's probably not going to come. So I hope this is the end or close to the end, and the victims can start sort of living in peace, you know, without fear of, you know, turning on their TV and seeing their abuser's face all over it again.
Arick, thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.